Hi friends, welcome to Java Tech Market. In this tutorial, we are going to learn about Java interfaces. What is an interface? There are various definitions for interfaces, like sometimes it is called sometimes we will call it as a software requirement specification, and sometimes we will call it as a 100% pure abstract class. And sometimes people say it's a blueprint of a class. Okay, so there are various definitions for interfaces. Now when it comes to a creation of interfaces, how do we create an interface? So let's say create a new and I'm going to use an Eclipse to for all my examples or code samples. Okay, so in my Eclipse, so I have clicked on new, went to interfaces. Just I'm creating an interface one. Very simple. So I just created an interface using an interface keyword. Okay. So now what we will have in this interface? So we can create a constants and abstract methods. Okay, so I'll cover abstract class, abstract methods in another tutorial. So let's define a few constants, or let's define a constants in interface. Okay, I have just created string type. I just created a constant type, and one more constant I am creating, string name. Java Tech Market. Okay, I just defined two constants in interface. Okay, so now I want to access these two constants in another class. Let me create another package com dot tech market dot sample. Just created one more package, and I'm going to create one class sample. Okay, I just created a class. Okay, here I'm going to write one method, public void get method. Here I am going to access my interface one constants. Type system dot out dot println interface one dot name. I'm going to run this method. I've just written main method sample sample equals to new sample sample dot get control F11. So, okay, if I see here, I got the type JSON and the name Java Tech Market. Here here in this class, in this class I am going to create one more variable, string test equals to test. I just created. Okay, so please remember I am going to cover about Java modifiers in another tutorial, interesting tutorial. So j- here I just created a simple instance variable string test equal to test, so with the default modifier. So now and for testing purpose I'm going to create one more package. Let's say com dot tech market dot test. I'm going to create one class, test class. Let's create a test class and public void test method. Here I am going to create an object of sample new sample test dot. Here in the sample I have created one variable. I just want to access that s dot test. So it is not accessible because this is a default modifier where I have declared this, excuse me, I have declared this variable with a default keyword or default modifier. So the scope of default modifier is within the package. I am unable to access the same modifier in another package, another class. Okay, let me make this as public. I just saved and I start test. Now I'm able to access it. I'm able to access the text variable. I just want to run the program for simplicity. I just want to make this as a static method. Now test dot test class. Test. I just access the variable that is there in sample class in sample package and test class in test package. Now you just understand the modifier here, default and public. If I remove here, I'll get the exception here because it is not visible. Here it is saying field sample dot test is not visible because the scope of this test variable is within the package. Now when it comes to this interface one type, interface one name, okay, here I have declared an interface with the two constants. Here I didn't specify any variable, meaning any modifier, public, public. I didn't define, but how it is getting accessed in the sample class which is there in another package. Interesting question. So in Java interfaces, the constraints which you define are by default public, static, and final. By default, whether you declare it or not, by default they are public, static, final. Okay, so that's why it is uh, it is getting accessed. But have you ever think of these modifiers for these constants? Why they have defined it as a public, why they have defined it as a static, why they have defined it as a final? Because this variable has to be accessed from anywhere in the application. If you define any variable that is uh, with a public keyword, it means if you define a public variable it can be accessed anywhere in the application. And why it is static? Because you cannot create an object to an interface to access the modifiers. By default, they are static. You can access the static modifiers as static methods using the name, using